Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Running Your Stories. In this episode, we're going to be talking with Nicole Jackson, who lives and runs in New Zealand. So we'll get to hear a little about the New Zealand trail running scene and also about how Nicole manages to fit in training for mountain marathons around having a family. And really, I would say that there's a lot of great tips and ideas if you're struggling to find time to fit in your training around having your family, and especially as a mother of two children and finding that compromise. It's Nicole certainly has a great way of doing things. It's successful for her. She has finished first lady in her most recent mountain marathon and is pushing on from there. So without further ado, let's get into the episode and welcome on to Running Your Stories, Nicole Jackson. Thank you. Okay, so Nicole, you say start at the beginning. So
Yep, start at the beginning.
you're very similar to myself. Coming to running, I wouldn't say later in life. That'd be unfair. But yeah, you haven't always been a runner. So where did you start?
Yeah, so yeah, I've been actually thinking about that a fair bit over the last couple of years too. And I did, like lots of people, I did do a little bit of running in high school. So I played a few different other sports as well. Played soccer and volleyball and what have you. And I swam first. That was the first thing I did was swimming. And then a friend of mine's mum was a runner. So we did our first race together when I think I was about 14. That was 5Ks. And but did a bit of track and field and stuff like that and bits and pieces. But once I sort of hit my 20s and discovered there was other things out there to do, not so much running, just once in a while for a bit of fitness, but never really stuck at it. So I picked up running again when I started nursing school. So that was when I was 30. And same thing, but like quite intermittent. So I'd run for, I don't know, a short period of time, maybe 6 weeks or so, and then something would happen and I would drop it and I wouldn't run again for months and months and months. Then there'd be an event would come up and I'd go, oh, I want to do that. So I'd train for like 2 weeks and then, go and run, and it would be painful and yuck. And then I'd stop again. And yeah, and then when I had children, life changed dramatically, as it does, and all of a sudden I had no time, but I had these little babies that like to be on the move, so I started running with them really in the stroller. That's probably when it really picked it up. So my firstborn Alex didn't sleep very well, mainly because we didn't know how to get him to sleep. So I'd chuck him in the buggy and go for a run, and he would sleep and I get some time out. And then when I had my second, we bought a super awesome buggy called a Chariot, and they both went in there, and then it took off after that. That was pretty much it, so we would do kilometers and kilometers and kilometers together. I think the longest run we did together was 28 Ks. So them in the buggy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd give him food, I'd give him coloring books, I'd give him all the stuff to do, and then we would just go. And yeah, and it was funny too. Someone said to me one day, they said, oh, do they fight? And I was like, I don't know, because I put my earphones in a lot of the time, and I wouldn't hear them. So it's not entirely true, but some days I would. Some days I just put my earplugs in and I just ignore them because I just needed some time on my own. Yeah. But we'd also do a lot of fun trips, stop and pick blackberries and go to the lake and go for a swim and then turn around and come home and things like that. So it was just a way of getting out and about rather than being in the car all the time and having to drive places. So we did a lot of Ks together on that Chariot.
It sounds like a really awesome way of finding time for yourself, as you say, because I think it's an opportunity I missed a bit when my kids came along. We had the backpack. We did quite a lot with the backpack, but when the twins came along, it was a different story. Very hard to put two twins in a backpack.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, yeah. We were similar too. We did like, yeah, the boys did a fair bit of time in the backpack too. But yeah, that double chariot. I mean, I called it my sanity wagon actually, because yeah, like lots of active women, I think motherhood was quite a big change for me. And I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to think about where you'd be without it. Actually, yeah, it was just being able to just get out the door and in the fresh air, and they would sleep in it, and I didn't have to take them in and out of the car at shops and stuff. It was just really easy, and yeah, and then you pushing that chariot like so we sold that when they maxed out at 30, so it maxed out at 37 kgs.
mm-hmm.
So you'd push them. So they were about, I think they were about 35, 36 kgs combined when we finally got rid of, when we rushed. So we didn't even sold it. I gave it away because I was afraid it would break instantly. So I just gave it away. So, you know, that was a lot of extra weight to push around too. So got me, yeah, middle of the summer and the heat and all the rest. So,
yeah, it's got to be a good workout. I see a few people at parkrun pushing the buggies around, and yeah, I'm always impressed when they finish ahead of me.
Yeah, well, and I mean that, and that's in, like, so we have a park run here. It's not the same. It's not the big one. It only runs during the summer. It's organized by the local running group. But my fastest 5K time is at the end of the last summer. We had that buggy, so I haven't beaten it. And that's, even though my running's, I've gotten stronger in the long distance stuff, I have not beaten that 5K time from the end of that first season of park run, or that, pushing the buggy. So. Yeah, and that's just that extra weight. I think that resistance training over the years.
Yeah, that extra weight, and if you need to get one of them back quickly to change or something, then it could motivate you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of it, really. And then also, but similar to, I was still a little bit start and stop, and then I, like a lots of people, again, I always had the goal. Do my first marathon before I turned 40, you know, and I don't know where these ideas come from, but I'd never sort of run. I don't even know if I'd run a half at that point. I'd run 17, but I don't think I'd done a half even, and that was on one of my bucket list things. So yeah, trained up for that, and then took some time off afterwards, and then, you know, say about 2 months, 3 months, didn't do a lot of running, then got back in. And it was so hard getting back in. And I was like, I'm never doing that again. So that would be just over 2 years, and I haven't stopped, basically. I've just kept ticking along. I have my recovery time and all that sort of stuff, but I'm never going to stop running again, ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, and that's what I think. If you find the big difference, that's what I've found, is that the amount of training and the level I wanted to move myself to during last year, I had no choice but to train as continuously as possible, but with obviously recovery time after races and things. So it just became my lifestyle. Sorry, my computer's just messing with me a moment.
Yeah, that's all right. And I think, like, actually, I was even thinking this morning, like, getting up early, like, my body, I think, like, it wants to get up and run now. There's actually, it's transitioned to that point. Yes. And that's that continuing to grow in your running and growing longer distances. I don't run every day, but when I get up in the morning, I can almost feel it, like my body is ready to go for a run. And it's because I do run a lot in the mornings too. So it's sort of, and that's probably only happened. Even that's only happened maybe in the last 6 months, you know, where it's not hard anymore. It's not hard. It's not hard to get up and get out the door. It's easy. It's like, my body's ready to go.
I'm finding that I can, for me, my running time is extremely varied. Do some early mornings, lots of lunchtime runs, because I'm lucky because I work from home.
You're saying that.
I'm actually sat at my work desk recording this, and I purposely have all those race numbers up on the wall behind me to remind me. I actually was picking up on that, and I've told someone about your 20-minute morning as well, because they're training for their first
60K. And I mentioned that, it's just taking those tips from other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really big thing for me, because when I started, which was almost exactly 2 years ago now, I started trying to get fit. And I've always known with my body that little and often works best for me. And I realized that what I really need to do is actually get my body moving 3 times a day. But at that point, there was absolutely no way I could run 3 times a day. Now I probably could. The only reason I don't is because you just spend your whole time in the shower, and that's a waste of time.
What, you shower? You shower?
I think it's important after running. But you spend so much time just getting the kit on, getting the kit off. So I find walking's a really good compromise. That every morning now, because I used to get out from bed, go to the kitchen, come straight to my desk, and your heart rate never raises. Whereas now I go out for a walk for 20 minutes, and a lot of the time, I either have to put a jacket or a jumper on to go out for a walk, and I come back and the house feels really warm, and it'll take a good 2 or 3 hours before I need to put a jumper on again. And that really gets the message home that your heart rate's been up all of that time. And so you from the 20, even just a 20-minute walk, good 2 or 3 hours of raised heart rate, and then by lunchtime it's down again. So I'll either run or walk again at lunchtime, and then again in the evening.
Yeah. I think it's a fantastic little way of just spending that little bit of extra time on your feet, and like you said, just getting that heart, your heart rate up a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I don't. I think, like you said a couple of times, I'm definitely no expert in any way. Yet, time on your feet over the years does teach you things. I actually mentioned something similar. A lady was asking me about the last event I did, and not all the time. My husband and I share a lot of the child, rearing things, but I do walk them to school, or now they're fast enough on their bikes, I run them to school. Now that's 2.2 Ks, so there and back twice a day. Yeah. It's another 4.8 Ks, and very rarely would I do it 5 days a week, but it's probably, most weeks I'd probably an extra 10, 12 Ks just by doing that simple thing. Yeah. And I just can add that to my total at the end of the week. And I mean, that's just, I'm lucky I get to do that. I know not everyone gets to drop their kids off at school in the morning, but it's just a little bit extra that you just add without actually even messing with your life in some ways.
Yeah, and I mean that's the key point, isn't it? It's finding how you can get these things into your lifestyle so that they're not a chore, they're not an effort. You actually miss them when you don't do them.
Exactly.
That's when it starts to really make a difference.
Yeah, and no, that's why I thought that 20-minute walk was quite interesting. So I've actually passed that on to 1 or 2 people. So it's a good, because like you said, it just gets you moving, gets your body thinking, let's get going. And
I've heard another version of that. There's a lady in the UK doing a campaign that I've seen on Twitter that's about get outside for an hour a day. Yeah. And that's a really good way, because obviously but have heard about the old Japanese 10,000 steps a day, and there are lots of people that can't do that. But everybody can get outside for an hour a day, because that hour could be just moving slowly around the garden to start with. And for ourselves it could be running reasonably fast, but everybody could do an hour a day outside, and that's a really nice way of doing it for kind of general public. And
I think it's a great one. And fairly early on, when was it, a couple of years ago, I guess it'd be 3, I'll be longer than that, when we lived in Dunedin, which is just south of where we are now, and went to a talk of a fellow there, and he talked about using running, and I've heard you say it too, for transportation. So that was quite a big switch as well, actually. And I thought, well, how are you going to squeeze everything in? And he was an amazing runner. He was one of New Zealand's top mountain runners for a long time. And he used to run from Christchurch to Akaroa, which is probably, must be about 80 Ks, maybe 90 Ks, kilometers. So he was on another level. But I was like, I could do that, but 3Ks or 4Ks or So once again, I've sort of thought, I've got these errands to run this afternoon. I'll run them. So, I'll literally run from A to B and drop something off and different pieces like that. And once again, it just squeezes a few more Ks in. It feels fantastic while everyone else is driving around.
Yes.
You feel quite privileged. But you're actually technically, you're kind of working almost, just, and that was, like I said, all these tips you gather along the way, and gets you outside. And it makes you feel good. It's completely different than jumping in the car and going and getting something.
Yes.
Yeah. Different mode of doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned very briefly one or two of the events you've done. Do you want to say a little more about those?
Yep. So I train a lot on the road because it's there, basically. And I love running, actually. I don't really care where it is. Actually, I do a fair bit on the treadmill inside as well. But it's just, I do love the hills. That's where my heart is. Actually, to tell everyone, that's where I met Kevin, was in the hills in Scotland. Yep. We met him at a bothy up there. How many years ago now? Half a lifetime ago, almost.
Yeah, it was quite a few years ago now.
Yeah, it's quite a few years ago now. So definitely the hills. I mean, the hills are my home, and that's where there's, as we all know, there's just something about them. It just rejuvenates your soul, really. And so I've always sort of been drawn to that trail running and the hills. And so when I went to look at the marathons and go, what am I going to do? There was a local one. It's called Aerosmith, and it's just a little local race. And basically the main climb, I want to say it's just over 1,000 meters. I think it was 1.1. And that's over 13 kilometers. So it's a nice steady climb. And then you head down the other side, and there's a few other doop-de-doos, and I think total is about 1,600 vertical meters. So I was like, I could do that. That sounds good to me. Sign up. So that was my first marathon, really. And it was. I was just actually literally saying yesterday morning, I think the last 2 to 3 Ks is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'd never really run that distance before. Got close to it in training, but not quite there. And knowing the finish line was there, and being quite exhausted because I'd never run one before, so you don't really know how to pace yourself and different things like that. And my knees were sore and my legs were sore, and everything was sore. And so that was the very first one, and that's about 40 minutes up the road. And I did all right. It's like I said, it's a local race, and you've said many times it's who shows up on the day.
Yes.
So I was the second woman across the finish line, so that was quite cool.
Yep.
I'm pretty darn happy with my time. It was about an hour faster or an hour and a half faster than I thought I'd be, and all those sorts of things. So that was sort of the first one. And then since then, so what have I done? I've done 3 more since then. Full marathons and a bunch of halves as well. So mostly, and most of them in the hills. One of them's been on the road, but the rest of them have all been on the hill. So not a road marathon, just a road half. I don't know if I could run a road marathon. I think it'd be so painful. Actually,
yeah, I did one recently. It was really tough, actually. It was, it just hurt a lot. It wasn't as enjoyable as doing off road.
I mean, I think I'll do one day, but maybe when I'm a lot older and I'm a lot slower. I think the toll it would take on my body, because I do push myself. So I think I'm not really sure if I want my body to do that. Whereas the last marathon distance I did, which was 3,600 vertical meters, so massive. You basically went up one hill, down the other side, up another hill, down the other side. Small rolly bit, and then back up the first hill you climbed. So that was fun. I actually finished. So that took me 7 hours 12 minutes. That was the longest time on my feet, and I actually finished that feeling pretty damn awesome. You know, like I could have kept going.
Yep.
Basically, you know, I felt really good. So it's just that change in terrain, and you know, and like you said, you're not running uphill. You know, you're walking as fast as you can.
Yes.
But you're not running uphill. You know, and so you take that pound out of your that legs, and your body's continually going this way and that way, and you know, it's absorbing the punches, and you know, and I think you're carrying that extra bit of weight on your back as well, so that sort of keeps you well, you know, using all your body, not just your legs, and yeah. So it's I don't know. I often think about a road marathon, and I mean, we'll do training runs, you know, that are 36Ks or something, mainly on the road, but to actually race one, a bit different.
Yeah, I did the road marathon I did. It was I'd been away on business for a couple of weeks, and I got back on the Saturday morning from Malaysia, and this race was on the Sunday, and I thought, well, you know, just I need to go out for a training run of that kind of length. So I tried to not race it.
Yes.
But,
try. How'd that go for you?
it was just really tough. I was really tired just from all the traveling, and it was kind of weeks afterwards I can look back on it and think, it was actually really good from a training point of view. But the first half of it was really enjoyable, because actually Richard, that was on the other podcast, it was a 2-loop, like a half marathon loop, and then do the same loop again.
Oh,
so
wow.
I ran the first loop with Richard, which was much tougher than what his first half had been, because this is actually it's the toughest road marathon in the UK, but it goes right past my house, so kind of you've got to try it.
You definitely got to try this one.
Yeah, so the first half was really enjoyable, because I was pacing myself, running with other people, having a chat, and then when I went out for that second loop, it just got hard. It was a very warm day as well. It was hard work. But I mean, I find these kind of shorter, faster things difficult. I just did this fell race today, which it's my second attempt at this one, because I did it this time last year and really broke myself, because similar to what you were just saying about the first time you do an event, which is the longest time you've done on your feet up to that point, your body, you know, you just doesn't know how to handle it. And that was what happened with the race last year. It's advertised as 25K, but it's actually 29.5K, which is normal in fell races once you know that.
On Strava.
Yes. Yeah.
I think Strava adds a little bit extra. That's my personal opinion, but
no, it's well known with these races that they're advertised as something, but they're actually all a bit more. Because that's. But when you do your first one, you don't know that. So that really suffered with it last year. So just being there again today, and had another go at it, and took more than 40 minutes off my time. And I can still walk afterwards, which is nice.
It's amazing how much faster you recover over time, actually, isn't it? You know, it's just your body gets more and more used to it. I mean you clocked up your Ks, you grew so fast in that first year. Like I have to admit to being a little bit jealous, because I was watching you. I was like, how the heck is he doing that? That's so to go to take on that kilometer gain in such a short period of time would take quite a bit of dedication. You know, it's
you see, I have one strength in running and events, and that's pig-headed stubbornness.
Yes. I think that got you through.
It can get you to the finish line, but it hurts a lot. So I'm ramping things back up again this year at a much more steady pace, because after doing the 182 Ks the event in January, and so by April time I did a 40 mile, what's that, about 60K,
Yeah.
Then I've got 200k events signed up to in September and November, and then go for the 182 again next
Yeah.
January. So
Yeah.
yeah, I should be a lot stronger and a lot more prepared for it this time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and you'll like you said, you'll a bit more understanding and of how it works. I guess. I mean, like I said, my longest time on my feet's what 7:12. So I've got it's creeping up. I've got my first ultra distance coming up in October, so that's 52. And but I'm curious to see. So it's 2,000 vertical meters, and I wonder if I'll be on my feet. I actually think, and it's better track, so I think it'll probably actually take me less time than the 42. So it's really interesting, the relevancy, depending on the terrain of an event and all that sort of thing. It
sounds similar. The first ultra I did, the White Rose Ultra last year, that was 30 miles, so it was just short of the 50k. It was about 49k or something. That I think is about 1,500 meters of ascent. Yeah. So similar. I did that in 5 hours 15 minutes, something of that order. So you'll be there around that kind of time.
No, it'll be interesting to do that. And just sort of just to step that distance up, but just to see how relevant is, time wise. And I do, it's that. It's funny when you tell people, they go, "Oh, you run a marathon. How long did it take you?" And they go, "Oh, 7 hours and 12 minutes." They go, "Oh, that's really slow." And then you sort of talk about the terrain and different events like that. There's another local one called Mount Summers, which is a fantastic event, local event. So they do everything from 10 to 42, and it basically runs around the mountain. So it circumnavigates the Mount Summers, and plus a little bit of running through the hills just to make up the extra Ks, and through the paddocks as well. It's really hot. It's really challenging. The terrain is just it's really hard to travel in, and large chunks of it, especially the first half, are actually quite hard to run because the track's sort of overgrown and it doesn't see as much traffic as the other side, and it's a very slow event, and it knocks a lot of people come down and go, this is my first. I met two people, it was their first, I think, marathon sort of distance. I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be quite interesting, quite difficult, and a lot of people don't finish it because the first half is so difficult. They pull out at that halfway point. But it's I think, like on the south side, I think the slowest point you're sort of going about 18 kilometers an hour. So it's actually you're not running, you are walking. I sort of, the last sort of events I've looked for is looking for a bit more runnability actually, in events, just actually where you can run, not the uphill bits, but not such. Not terrain where you're walking half of it anymore. I mean, that's for me at the moment anyways. I'm going, now how runnable is this event and how runnable is that one, and sort of choosing that way a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of events in the UK, in the lakes and Wales and up into Scotland that are very, very hilly. And I don't feel quite ready for them yet because of the pace of the ascents and just the toll it takes. As you say, I'm kind of doing the events that you're talking about, where the ascent isn't so crazy. So yes, you can do the distance, but it's kind of runnable distance, and it's enjoyable. Although I did an event in the Lake District, the Lakeland Great Lakeland 3-day event. A few months ago, and that was really good because that was it's not set up as a race. You can obviously go as fast as you want, and you have your own time tracked and everything, and that's over 3 days. So over the 3 days we did 58 miles, so that's, I guess, just short of 100k.
Cool.
And that was the most ascent I've ever done in 3 days. It was over 6,000 meters, close to 7,000 meters in 3 days. yeah, it was a really good event. Just having it broken down into 3 separate days rather than all at once was a good introduction. But it was it was tough. It was sort of 7.5 hours first day, maybe 6.5, 7 hours the second day, and about 4.5 hours the third day. So if you laid all that out in one go, that's quite a lot of hours.
Yeah. No, that's not, and I'm actually, that's one of my sort of goals is to work towards, is I'd like to work up to that idea of running more than one day in a row.
Yes.
Which I do in training and stuff, but so not so much in the hills. I tried once last year, did a sort of 36K off a trail run. It was about 6 hours. I really wanted to run the next day, but by the end of that I was my legs were sore. Like, I had a few clicks and a few quirks. I was like, nah, I'm not running the next day. It's just not worth it just so I can say I ran 2 days in a row. But I do want to work up to it, and that's
one of the things that did help on that event, I've got to say, is that at the end of the second day we just stood in the ice cold lake, waist deep, beer in one hand and can of Coke in the other hand, and that definitely helps your recovery. That's great around here. The lakes and the rivers are freezing cold all year round, so that's quite a common post-race activity, is go sit in the river for a while and just let the legs cool down. But I'll get there, though. It's just, like I said, it's just time on my feet and practice. And actually, this week, going tramping or hiking with the family this week, that was a little bit like that. So the first day we walked in as a family, which was whatever, but you got your big pack on. The next day I had a really big off-road run, which was just phenomenal, and really enjoyed it, and quite difficult. And then next day was walking again with the pack on. And then because it was a one-way route, I ran back to the truck. So I spent 3 hours with the tramping pack on, and I ran it back. So quite an extra weight. So that was those multiple days on your feet, and but I guess a bit more similar to tramping, really, in some ways, and you're moving, you're running, you're definitely running, but not at a nice pace and making it, and comfortable. So, it's just all about whatever works, really, and getting out in the hills and having a really good time, and socializing. Like, I talk to everybody on races, and so people comment about it afterwards, like, oh, you're the one that chatted to me at this bit. And you meet these complete strangers halfway up a hill, and you have these discussions with them, and then you never see them again. And maybe at the end, or even like some people you stay in contact with, which is quite cool as well. I liked hearing that story about you guys running the whole race. With doing it together. It's great, because I do the same. I just chat to everybody, wish everybody well. I had a fantastic experience again a few weeks ago. They were doing the summer version of the winter race, the Spine. So I just went out for like a 30k run, just to run in the middle of the runners doing the race, and just chatted with them and cheered them on. And it's great. It's a really good part of the racing, but you can only do that on the longer distance events, because like the fell race I was doing today was about, I say 29k, I think it was. But it's so competitive. People are pushing themselves so hard to go so fast. Well, there was a little bit of chat around along the way. Found one person who's going to be doing the same 100k ultra later in the year, so I'll see him again. But there isn't really the spare breath for for chatting the way there is in the longer events, where you've got to slow down and pace yourself more.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That sort of similar experience, really, and I've noticed that with road running too. You don't chat as much on road runs. I try to a little bit, but people are really pushing themselves.
Yes.
And definitely over, and myself as well, over that actually really enjoy the off-road sort of half marathon for that reason. It's actually that you can really go for it. It's a distance that you can really push yourself. So you don't, like I said, you don't tend to socialize it as much, and you see the pack a little bit more, I think. So it is a bit more competitive. You know where you are in the race, so it sort of changes it, where those longer distances you spread out more, and you're often on your own. Or in New Zealand anyways, you are, a lot of these races are in the hills and in the trees and all the rest, and you might see a few people on the tops, but other than that, I mean, someone could be literally 500 meters behind you. You'd never know. For half the race you'd have no idea.
You get similar here, where you think you're completely isolated on your own, and you get into the next checkpoint and there's somebody stood there, and you've only been a minute or 2 minutes behind them for the last 5 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, obviously once you get on the open tops, it's a little bit different, and the bigger races are a little bit different, but the little local ones, like the last one I did, which was called Oxford Odyssey, that was with the big climb. There was one section of it, there was a little loop, so you run up to a hut. You had to pick up a little star piece of paper saying you've been there, and then you run back down and meet the track. And that was really cool because you pass people.
Yes. And
it was honestly sort of the first time you'd seen anyone in, I don't know, maybe only 20 minutes or something like that. But it was, really, it just sort of perks you up a little bit. And you say hi to everyone, and 2 seconds later they're gone, and and you continue on. But you sort of, it's interesting, that little bit of social.
Was that the race that you finished first lady in that one?
So that was the Oxford Odyssey. So as you've mentioned many times, it's who shows up on the day, of course. So that I was really, I mean, I even the bigger ones I've done, I have managed to sort of stay in that top 10, which I'm pretty stoked with, and because there's some pretty fast. I mean, these are against women, some women who compete, like they're out there in the world stage. It was sort of, I thought I might get in the top 3 or 4, depending on who showed up, maybe 5th, but definitely not the first one. It was, I raced my race, but it was, I felt, like I said, nothing went wrong, really. I could have probably gone a bit faster even, because like I said, I still had quite a bit left at the end. I trained really hard for it. I'd been on most of the track, so I sort of knew what I was in for, so I was mentally prepared for it. Had picked up quite a few tips along the way. Had a couple, I had those other sort of 3 or 4 events behind me, so I had a little bit more experience, because that's actually one thing one of my mentors said. He said, you need to do more events because you need that event experience.
Yes.
To gain the confidence. You can go out for a training run whenever you want, but you actually need that event experience. So it was actually interesting. I passed the first women, because I'm not that fast downhill. Which is unfortunate. I'm trying to get faster. It sucks to go uphill and pass everyone and then have them all pass you again on the downhill. Anyways, I passed the sort of first and second place women at about probably the 14K mark or something like that. And I had no idea. I passed the first woman. She goes, "Oh, you're the first woman now." I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know, that was, and then I was like, oh gosh, now what do I do? I was like, okay, I'm gonna, this is a bit new. And so it was really about, pushing myself beyond that point and going, okay, she could be 500 meters behind me, ready to pass me on the next downhill, and so I really pushed myself on the downhill after passing her. And it was, and along the flats. And I knew when she hadn't passed me by the time we headed back uphill that she wouldn't get me. It's pretty hard to catch me on the uphills. And it was a perfect day. I looked at the times before, and I think the fastest woman the year before might have been about 45 minutes faster than me. Mm-hmm. So it's, I like looking at that. I like looking at back and seeing how fast people have run it in other years, and just because I think it that sort of grounds you a little bit as well. It's good to stay grounded.
Yeah, as you say, with getting the event experience, that's something I know. When it was like this time last year when I did this race, I looked at it and I looked at the times people had done, and I thought, how can the times be that long? It can't be that hard, but actually it is that hard. And looking at the previous year's times is a really good way of finding out, well, what's this race about? This terrain. Yeah.
No, I would agree with you. It sort of gives you that idea, and like I said, most of the time I sort of sit either at the back of that front pack or the front of the second pack, sort of thing. That seems to be where I slot myself in. And so looking at those times, go, okay, so if I go back to about 5th place, that's probably my goal time, and then you look at all the other factors and go, okay, well, I have to do this, but my watch doesn't last that long. It's only lasts about 4 hours on GPS. So I don't wear, I wear it for the time, but I don't actually track I haven't to this point tracked my Ks. So so that's kind of, I don't know what I'll do going forward, but it's kind of a nice way to run a race in some ways too, because you literally, you get a few hints along the way, and you've been on your feet for 2 hours or 3 hours, so you must be about here, but you don't actually know how much farther it is to go till the end. I mean, it's a lot more relaxing, I think, and I'm
a big believer in learning your body and running to how you feel, like you say, rather than trying to look at pacing on your watch all the time or something. Although I had the experience only a few days ago on Thursday evening, the club that I'm running with now did a handicap race that I've not done before, where
head in.
you predict your time that you're going to do it, and then no watches, no phones, no way of tracking it, and then I'm very much don't look at my time while I'm running. I really like looking at the data afterwards and breaking things down, but I don't look at it while I'm running. But just knowing it wasn't being recorded felt very different.
I like that part of it. I think having the fact that I've got a sort of bottom end watch, which doesn't last very long, has sort of just naturally progressed that, really. And you do, and you get to know your body, and you sort of, you run the terrain where you think you're comfortable at this point in the event, I guess. And it's helpful, I think, you don't get so caught up in the hype of the beginning and of a race and all that sort of stuff. And I just think we have a similar, because I belong to a local running club here, and we've got it's called the Turkey Trot, and it's 3Ks, and the winner is the person who's closest to their time. So you have to, exactly like that, you choose your time, and then and it's fascinating because the year before last, it's a very small club, it's a small town, but there would have been on the day probably 12 of us runners. Well, I think 3 of us got within 1 second.
Wow.
And there's about 5 or 6 that were within 3 seconds of their time. It's.
I was about 4 minutes out. Anyways, it's a fun run, and the thing is, it's not always the fastest that wins, so it's quite cool. I enjoy those. I mean, this one was kind of interesting because there was a written description of the route, and it was a marked route, but it was a route that nobody had done before. And then it was a hilly route and a trail route, and so there was actually quite a lot of factors to kind of put in place, and so I factored in probably going off route a little bit. In the end, I didn't go off route, so that's why I ended up so much faster than. But the reason I didn't go off route is because I knew I was racing today. I thought, okay, I'm going to go this at a steadier pace and just use it as a training run. But then I thought, well, the only way I can not go off route is to follow somebody that understands the description, because it's an area I don't know very well. And so I read the description. It didn't really mean very much at all. So I thought, okay, I better keep in sight somebody else, which meant I had to run faster than I really wanted to on the night. But it was a good experience. It's all good fun.
And that's, I mean, you talk about longer running and doing the longer distances and stuff, which I'll admit I enjoy. But listening to your friend that runs the 400 meters, I really really liked that one. That was fantastic. And looking at those parallels, and people always go, oh, you run so far, and I was like, well, to be honest, like 3 kilometers at the end, I'm pretty much puking. So. And it made me think about, he said about how your body, that fight or flight response, which I'd never really thought of, over a long distance, you just slowly feed your body and you pace yourself and you grunt out certain bits and what have you. But 3Ks, a fast 3K, freaking hurts, like, really does. My body or anyone's, you've completely depleted your energy stores. And you're ready to puke, and it's a totally different experience and fun, I love the endorphin rush from a short, fast run.
Just while we're mentioning Hakan, I was speaking with his dad yesterday. He finished 6th in the UK at 400 meters. Which is absolutely awesome. I think his dad's more disappointed than he. Not disappointed that because 6th is in the UK is absolutely brilliant, but with 20 meters to go, he could have had 3rd. Yeah. So he's that close.
He'll like I said, that he'll learn too. That's probably like you said, that's racing. I don't know what it's like to run 400 meters.
He's one of the youngest out of the people who was racing as well. He only just makes the under 20 age category, so he has time to learn and time to develop as well. So he's some of the other guys have had more time to be, but he was hitting PBs at the national championships. So he's done really really well, and
good on him. And it was great to listen to someone who has such a passion for the sport at such a young age too. I think and just, like you said, about really enjoying it and having a good time, and because at the end of the day, I guess that's sort of what it's about. You gotta obviously there's those uncomfortable points, and if I ever do get to go longer, I may one day get to that very uncomfortable point. But haven't been there yet.
Interestingly, it's one of the reasons I'm pleased I did this shorter race today is the shorter, faster, and it was more technical terrain than what I prefer to run on. It really pushed me out of my comfort zone, and there was 4 or 5 times today that I thought, why am I doing this? I could be having a nice sort of gentle, longer, more comfortable run and enjoying the scenery because I can lift my head up and see things. But I think it's important to regularly push yourself out of your comfort zone, because then when you get on that big event that you've been working towards and you start to struggle, you've got that experience to fall back on.
And that's the longer stuff. I guess, like I said, it's like, what have I done now? 4 or 5, must be 6 events, and just learning and as you go, and then learning from those around you. We have a guy in our club. He's like my hero. He's run the Kepler, which lots of people. The Kepler is worldwide known. And so he's, I don't know, he must be on his 21st or 25th time doing it. Like, he doesn't even have to enter with everyone else. I think he just sends in a handwritten note, saying I want to do it this year. So he'll be 72 this year.
Wow.
So he's just phenomenal, and he's got so much knowledge. From all his years. Apparently they told him he should stop running when he was about 35 or something like that. And he's just kept going, and we do training runs with him, and it's up the hills, and he knows where. He's like, go do this run. This is what will get you ready for this race. He knows that, and a bit more old school. Like, so those guys just did kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, whereas I think nowadays, like, I do a bit more cross training. But I was trying to sort of think, oh, well, why is it so different? But I think, oh, I don't know about you, but like our work is more sedentary than what theirs was. So they were active all day. And then these are farmers too. So they were actually cross training all day.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they would go for their run. Whereas we aren't, we're sitting, like this is my office too, half the time, you know, and so we're sitting, and then we need to do those other things, I think, a little bit more.
Yeah.
What they would have had to do 25 years ago when work was a lot more physical.
I mean, I just had my big cross-training week as well in the Alps. That was good.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Congratulations, Mont Blanc. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. That was actually a really tough day because these days you're not allowed to bivvy up at the Guta Hut, which is where I'd bivvied on my first attempt back in 2000. That's not allowed now, so you have to bivvy down at the Tete Rousse. So it's an extra 2.5-3 hours of quite serious rock scrambling that you have to do at the start of your summit attempt. Unless you hire a guide or go with a tour company, and then you can get into the huts. Ends up costing a lot of money, but I really wanted to do it actually with me leading. So there was 5 of us went out there, a couple of guys who were complete novices. By the end of the week, there was me and one of the guys who had started the week as a complete novice who went and summited. So, but it was 13 hours on the feet, and it was just very different because it was walking and lots of stops to catch your breath at altitude. But actually, 13 hours on your feet is just exactly like an ultra. And my body handled it that way, and I had so much confidence knowing that I'm not going to get to 10 hours in and just collapse in a heap, because I know my body will keep going as long as I'm not trying to push the heart rate too high. As long as I'm keep feeding myself, keep drinking, I know I'm going to keep going, and it just it gave me a lot of confidence to go and plod up a mountain for 13 hours in total, up and down.
And I think, I mean, this is philosophizing, but you carry that in other ways in other places in your life as well. I mean, like in my 20s, I did a lot of ski touring and a lot of tramping, and so similar thing. Those long, slow days on your feet, and then took that sort of break when I started studying and things like that, and really lost that ability, I think, in some way. We did a few longer tramps and stuff, but definitely went backwards, lost that fitness, and I feel like I'm getting closer, but I'm not quite there yet. But you carry that with you into other areas too. You have that confidence to go, actually, this work I'm doing right now is really crappy and I hate it, but there is an end, and I'll get to the end and it'll be all right. And you said you'd do it, so you'll just finish doing it, and you commit to things, and you sort of follow through. Like, I find since I've got back into this sort of lifestyle, I guess, of being out in the hills for longer, or being quite structured, is that it carries on in other ways. And when things get tough with the children, whatever it is, you can sort of go, oh gosh, and grin and bear it in some ways. And I guess that's where that top 2% comes in, So if someone said, listen, Nicole, let's head out and do this mission in the hills, I could probably say yes now, whereas 5 years ago I would have been a little bit hesitant. Of whether I could have hacked the long day.
But the crossover into your work that you mentioned there, I had a real direct experience with that 5 or 6 weeks ago. We had a major new customer coming on board. So that's why I had to travel. I was going out to Austin in America to deliver training there, and then going to Penang in Malaysia to deliver training there. But the way we were delivering the training was to record training videos on the software that we sell. And I had about a week and a half, 2 weeks to record what would have been ideal to do over 6 months. And it's the kind of thing that in the past would have really overwhelmed me, and you get overwhelmed and then you can't actually get anything done. But it was just kind of like, okay, I've done overwhelming things recently. All you do is, if you're out on a run, I mean, when I tried to do, I did do a 100-mile race, there's no way I can think of the whole route. I tried to do it one day, having wrecked most of it. I sat down and tried to just walk myself through the whole route, and it just gets overwhelming. It's just scary. It's so much. And so all I was doing the whole time is just being in the moment of, right, what do I need next? The next thing I need is to get from A to B. Once I get there, I'm going to see this, and then I'll look at the next part. And so that's what I did with the work, which was, like I say, absolutely overwhelming amount of work. I just thought, well, there'll be less to do if I get this piece done, and there'll be less to do if I get that piece done, and I got it done. And it was just such a different experience of the amount of stress and hassle it could have been. And I didn't stop running that week.
Exactly. And I mean, that's it. You pretty nailed it. And I mean, that's one of the things, whether it be with running or other areas, I've really learned, and probably once again, just over the last sort of year or so, because someone had said it somewhere on a podcast or somewhere I've read it, of being, and like you said, on those longer races, just be in the moment. Don't worry about what's ahead. The Oxford Odyssey, I did that third climb is crazy steep at the beginning, like just nuts. And I mean, you can't. There's nothing really to hold on to, and it's quite slippery, and you're just digging your toes in and just. But you're just there. You just focus on that. You don't worry about the next couple hundred meters that you got to do, or 700 meters. You just focus on that moment, and it actually sort of eases the discomfort in some ways. And you just sort of tick along, and those are all the tips that have come through. Like you said, listening to podcasts, there's always something you can learn, from everybody out there, and doing lots of reading, and I mean, Facebook, social media, whether you love it or don't love it, you get these little 4-second snippets.
And people's race report blogs as well.
Yes.
Really,
very
really
much.
good ones there.
Yeah, and you just pick up these little tiny bits. I know there was one I read not long ago. It's a coach from the North Island here in New Zealand, whatever, you read this and you go, blah, 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 blah. And then he talked about going uphill, and I actually read that and go, I'll try that. And it's completely changed the way I run uphill. That one sentence, I go, I'll try that. It worked. And then on you go.
So come on, then what was the tip?
I used to take quite long strides uphill. Mm-hmm. So especially with walking. So I was a long strider, and he sort of talked about it being like a vehicle. So as you move uphill, you bring it down a gear and you slow down. So I've probably halved my steps. Mm-hmm. And so they're quicker. They're a little bit, they're quicker than what they, they're slower than what they were, and they're smaller. But what I can do is it somehow manages to get me up there less tired, so I can do more without stopping. Not that I stop a lot anymore, but and at the end of the day, I tire a lot less. Yes. And I'm not getting to the top any slower than what I used to. I know I run with my husband sometimes, and he'll walk and I'll run too, and we're at the same pace. It's like, I might as well bloody just walk. There's no sense of wasting myself running. But yeah, so it was actually thinking about like a car. I'm going to take myself down a gear. I'm going to take slower steps. And I trip a lot less because I'm as well. So those steps are smaller. I've got a bit more energy to lift my feet, so I'm not tripping over things. And and it works. Yeah, it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but it definitely.
I've been teaching myself exactly the same thing. That, and actually, it's the same tip for going downhill.
Yeah.
To go downhill faster, you also take very small steps because it keeps you more in control. Therefore, you can take faster steps on the downhill. Lots and lots of fast steps. And there's a guy I run with here who's recently did his Bob Graham round. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have heard of the Bob Graham.
Yes.
And didn't something break the record this year?
Yes, yeah, the record's been broken this year, and a lady who's almost local to here did a back-to-back double.
Yes, that's right. So I do know about it. Yes. It's getting coverage in the New Zealand.
Yeah. So a friend of mine who a lot of people have heard of, because when he got to the finish, he proposed to his girlfriend. So
okay.
There's a video on social media of that.
I think I might have seen that as well. Yeah.
But he did a lot of cycling before he got into running, and so he has a very high cadence, very high step rate, but very small steps, and he just seems to glide over everything. Yes. And I've been running with him and just watching his feet, and it can definitely work really well when you get it right. I think it takes a lot of practice to try and change your stride, but I do think it reduces injury a lot. There's some very good videos, and I really can't remember who did them now. I found them on YouTube. It's an American lady that runs this set of videos, and she did a really good sort of example of how to do it, tips on how to convince yourself, because once you start running, you start to return to your normal stride. And she's saying, so sometimes just focus on moving your arms up and down much faster, and that'll make your feet will follow your arms. So you can just kind of, because whichever method you use, it'll only work for so long, and then you'll start to revert. So she talked about a few different methods that you can do, a bit of this and a bit of this. I found it very effective, and I need to go back to it because I've got a little lazy with it recently. But it also works for walking up hills. It's exactly the same idea, just the smaller steps. Really makes a big difference.
That gliding over the terrain, I definitely still struggle with that quite a bit on the going, the downhill. But once again, your friend that ran the 400 meters, I mean, he put it perfectly. He talked about the forces and all that sort of stuff, and it makes sense. It actually, it makes sense on a physiological level. And but like you said, it's practice. So Ashburton's dead flat. The only hill is actually just around the corner from us, and I'm not joking. It's not a hill, okay? And it's so tiny. So it's actually, we've got hills close to us, which is great. They're 40 minutes away. But you still got it. It's 40 minutes there, and it's 40 minutes back. So
is that 40 minutes running or driving?
Oh, driving. So 40 minutes driving. 40 minutes driving to get to the bottom of the hill. So it is a little bit difficult at times to get out there, just with balancing everything. And so I do a bit of training on the treadmill inside for the uphills, and but you can't train for the downhills. So it's it's one of those areas that I'll continue to work on. Like, and any tips are that's fantastic, just gliding over it. But you still got to practice it, and it's really hard to practice around here. There's just outside of the pool complex, there's another hill. I don't know, it'd probably be 5 meters long maybe, and people do we do sets on it, so you're running up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, and I mean that's as good as it gets around here. We've got the steps at the reservoir. It's about 7K from my house, so I think I remember that reservoir, actually, when you mentioned it the other day, too. I'm pretty sure we went up there one day. It's sort of, I know. I remember a reservoir quite close to your, I guess it might not be where you live now, though, where you used to live.
I'm a little closer to it now, but it could have been. I can't remember which one we went to, but
that's all right.
But it's about it's 5 sets of steps, but I'd say it's 7 or 8 stories high.
Yeah.
So the big steps and the very steep steps.
Yeah.
But I've been practicing just as much running up the steps as the downhill to get back to the bottom of the steps, because there's two ways you can go down. There's a looping road, which is somewhat easy, but you can still push yourself to go fast, or there's like a trail down on grass. So the last few times I've been running down on that trail. Again, just like you say, you've got to get practice on the downhills. I'm also very slow on downhill, which the kind of race I was doing today, the people in that, there's a lot of people who are technically, very good, technical runners. Do a lot of fell racing, and they were absolutely destroying me on the downhills. just as you were saying, the uphills, I was fairly competitive with. Let's say again the pack following the leaders, not the lead pack. I'm nowhere near that for fell racing. But yeah, I definitely keep going out with people doing these more technical, shorter runs. It helps with the long ones.
Yeah, no, and it's great. Like I said, I enjoy all running. So like both my boys, so they're 5 and 6, and I mean they'll come to the park runs, and some days I don't. I just run with them, and I get the buzz off that. They're sort of doing. Oh, they've done 3Ks now, I think. So and they love it, and not every time, but most of the time they love it, and they're really into it, and the whole buzz of it, and it's created a bit of a social outlet. So we're sort of growing our group of runners here. So we go out every Saturday morning together, and that's it's just a slow 10K because we accommodate for everyone, but some of us go earlier and put more Ks in before we meet everybody else. And you got to do your slow run anyways. And then we do a speed night as well. So, and that's on Tuesday nights, and that's, it's just creates that social vibe, and, part of the community, it's Ashburton's about 15,000 people, so it's fairly small. But yeah, it's sort of replaced what I used to have from the mountain community in my 20s, and then this running, the outdoor running scene and the trail running scene is massive, and in New Zealand, it's really, it's got a really, I think it's massive. It's probably not that big, but it's created that community that I really missed when I sort of left the mountains. Yes. So it's getting back there now, and and the same vibe and all the rest. So yeah. Great good to catch up. And I was just going to say to everyone, it's great. Like Kevin and our lifestyle in some ways has followed a similar course, maybe give or take a little bit of time. But building a business, and then yours was way more successful than ours was, but that's all right. And we had children about the same time, more or less, and then getting back into running and stuff. So we've had this we're even born on the same day. So I was I was telling someone the other day, our life path has gone, in some ways, has been quite similar. So it was great watching your running as I was sort of trying to get my Ks up too, and going, oh my God, he's off doing 300 miles. What's wrong with you, Nicole? But
it is a question of how much pain you want to put yourself in, and are you stupid enough to do it?
And I'm actually really comfortable where I am now. I'll admit I do have a goal to go longer, but I don't think it'll probably be until my boys are a little bit older maybe, and like the cool thing is women run really long distances for a long time, and so do guys. But man, there's some, you just, as long as you take care of your body, I can be running into my 50s, 60s, and I'll tackle my 100 miler in my 50s, I think, maybe.
Yeah, but of course, once you do 100 miler, you've got to go longer.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? You run a half, and someone goes, "Oh, run a marathon," and then they go, "Oh, run an ultra," and it all just gets a bit crazy, really. It all gets. So I'm actually trying really hard not to get caught up in that. I like where I am now. I'm happy. I do want to get this ultra under my belt just so I can say I've done it. But
I have a feeling that when you do this ultra, you're going to really like it, and you're going to go in that direction. But I think really that's the thing for me, because even whether you talk about ultras or mountain marathons or anything else, there's so much variation and so many things available, especially if you look worldwide rather than just in a particular place.
Yeah.
That you can really choose the type of thing you enjoy doing. For example, one of the things I really enjoy is doing something that isn't a loop. Where you're going from just like the spine race, you head north, and you never loop back down. And that really appeals to me, because you start in one place, you finish in a completely different place. And so I've been looking. So the next the 100k one I'm doing is the Hardmoors 60. Well, 60 miles. And that's up the east coast. So some of the places we went actually when you were over here to Whitby and up that coast
Whitby,
there.
Yeah, I remember Whitby. Yeah.
So it's up that coastline. It's again you're heading north. I don't know why we always head north around here, but
must have something to do with the winds, is it? The wind always at your back, or no?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, I had so many options because I'm capable of doing events. So I really looked around and decided actually, there's a whole series of events run in the same area by the same people. So that was part of it, that I wanted to go and try one of their events. They're very highly regarded. But then also, I like this idea of starting and finishing in a different place. And I really enjoy those kind of events. So yeah, that's
because I think that's like you find your place where you're comfortable, and and of course you want to chase goals. That's great, but you can get caught up in a lot of race hype, and that was something that someone said very early on to me, and I'm really glad they did too. Is don't get caught up in what other people are doing, because there's always someone doing something bigger and faster and better. I'm just a recreational athlete.
Exactly.
So, I do use the word athlete because it consumes a fair bit of my life, but it's recreational. It's squeezed between everything else, and there's always something. So just be happy where I am.
One of the probably the next podcast, if not definitely one of the next few, is another friend of mine, a guy called Clark. He's just done the Western States.
Cool.
Ultra. So that's going to be an interesting one. And like you say, I mean, he ran the same race as me today. He was half an hour faster than me. There's always somebody faster and better, and
exactly. And getting caught, like when you find something you like. I was actually listening to a bit of the history on the Western States because just yesterday, it was just a small snippet, but it's really it's cool learning where these races come from, and I think America has a lot more tradition behind that stuff. I think trail running is still, it's maybe 20 years old, but it's really grown in the last 10 years in New Zealand.
It's massive in the UK now. It used to be like ultra and like trail ultra. I think somebody, and again, there's a UK podcast called Training for Ultra. Sorry, that's a US one. There's the British Ultra Running podcast, which is very good, but it's very specific to Britain.
Yes.
They were saying on there that if you go back 5 or 10 years, there were only sort of 10 ultras a year in the UK. Now there's pretty much one a week. It's you could travel up and down the country. You could do an ultra every week, and some weekends there's more than one.
And there's probably people that do.
Yes. Well, when I did that, a little more so marathons than ultras, but when I did that road marathon, I was chatting with a guy, and he literally drives to the next marathon and sleeps in his car and does it. And he was the week after that one I think was his 99th marathon, and he was going for his 100th.
100th, wow. Yeah, no, it's pretty phenomenal. So yeah, I like hearing those. It's nice, some of those, the history behind what some of the ones in the States that have been going for that little bit longer, and yeah, and have a quirky beginning, I guess. They've come from a I think that's America for you. They just do random things, but so it'll be, yeah. I mean, I do hope to be part of the sport and going forward, and I'm really looking forward to the day when I've yet to help out on a race. I haven't done that. Whether you be a tail end Charlie, I'd quite like to do that one day. Maybe fairly soonish. I think that would be a really cool experience. To run the end of a race and help people through the end. Like the last event I did, I was 7:12. Well, the fellow who was the last one in, I believe he might have been just over 12 hours or pretty darn close. Yeah. Once again, he was, I would say, pushing 70. He was an older gentleman. Mm-hmm. So yeah, someone was out amazing, and it's dark. We started in the dark and he's finishing in the dark, and just that really cool vibe. I think I almost cried, when he passed the finish, when he finished, because it was massive, and it's such a long time to be out there. You think, oh, they were out there for another 5 hours than you were, Nicole. That's a long time,
Yep.
And so that person who sort of follows them in, it would be quite a cool experience, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, volunteering is definitely a great thing to do. It's something. Yeah. Again, I'd like to volunteer on more races. Because I spent a chunk of my time volunteering for mountain rescue. I end up with, there's just between training, racing, family, work, and mountain rescue. It's something I don't get to do as much as I would like to. But without volunteers, the races won't happen. So I think spending a few minutes talking about volunteering is very, very worthwhile. No, I'd like that to be in my near future, and like I said, it's hard when you're out there, you want to race, but just being part of it in a different capacity, I guess, really, and just being part of that community. Once again, being part of that community, whatever you're doing. We've got a fantastic Facebook page called Wild Things in New Zealand, and it's actually it's bigger than just a Facebook page. You can join up and become a VIP, and you get sort of deals. He's also put it's also got a massive trail directory on the website. Right. So basically, if you come to New Zealand for overseas and say you land in Christchurch, you literally put Christchurch in there, and it's got all people submit the runs they've done. Mm-hmm. So he's just building that. That's building slowly, but it does have a Facebook page, like everything does, and it's just you ask a question, and all this advice comes back from people's experience, and some professional experience as well, and it's just, so it's nice to contribute, So if someone asks a question and you think you might know the answer, well, throw your 2 cents worth in, and sometimes it's different than what someone else thinks, but it's just being part of that community and contributing, and it's a great place to be. It's worldwide. Look at, your mate from the UK is doing it too, and talk. Absolutely.
And I was saying, so one day you can come down to New Zealand and run a race together. That'd be quite cool. Yeah,
definitely do it one day.
Yeah. I know I'd love to come and do some fell racing. That'd be awesome.
So, you say that until you're up to your chest in mud, and
I've been quite lucky. I've had one day with some really bad weather that was on a 25k course, so it wasn't too bad. It was interesting, very interesting, but I've actually been really lucky with race days so far. Haven't I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but haven't encountered too much other than that one when it was cold and wet and slippery, and you couldn't see anything. And
you're missing out on the full experience. You need to get out in some worse weather.
I'm pretty sure it'll come. It'll happen. And but actually, well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I shouldn't say that. One of the ones I did last year, the start of it was quite wet and cold, and and I was in my element. I mean, I grew up like in the wettest, cold, dampest, muddiest environment on the west coast of Canada. So, I always actually joked I grew up in a puddle. That's what I did, which is kind of true. But yeah, it actually, and it brings back that childhood almost too, like running in those environments. Yeah, and or training in, on a crappy day. It just makes you feel kind of alive, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It gives you a much bigger satisfaction when you're finished and you're back inside.
Exactly. Yeah. So, no, well, it's really cool to catch up with you, Kevin, and and good luck with the podcast.
Thank you.
I mean, like you said, it's great. Just listening to everyday runners. I mean, I think there's always things you can learn from the top guys too, like definitely. But yeah, just us that try and squeeze everything in. And
that's the idea. Some of the top guys, I mean, like you say, you'll learn from the top guys, but some of their things are a little inaccessible, and you kind of think, well, I can't do that much training, and and so this is the idea that there's a lot of great people and great stories amongst the ordinary, more average people. So
very much.
Thanks for your support, and thanks for coming on. We've broken my rule here because the idea is to only do face-to-face podcasts, but I wasn't allowed to pop out to New Zealand for this one, so.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready for my pop out back to the UK either quite yet. So. No, she's we stick pretty close to home. Actually, even when I look at events, it's like the closer they are, the better. I don't go too far for events either, mainly because it's quite hard on the family. So, great to talk to you.
Yeah. And, thanks very much.